Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his face as he watched the massive drilling machine tear into the lunar rock. The sound was deafening in the enclosed tunnel, but he had learned to ignore it years ago. Around him, 20 human workers operated the alien machinery with practiced movements. Their faces were covered in dust, and their clothes torn from the sharp rocks. The Corvanti had ruled Earth and its colonies for almost 200 years now. Jake remembered the stories his grandfather told him about the time before, when humans lived free under open skies. Now they lived underground in tunnels and caves, working day and night to feed the alien empire that owned them. The drilling machine suddenly stopped. Red warning lights flashed across its control panel. Jake cursed under his breath and walked over to examine the problem. The machine was old, like most of the equipment the Corvanti gave them. They did not care if it broke down or if humans got hurt using it. "What is it this time, Jake?" asked Tom, one of the younger workers. His hands were shaking from exhaustion. They had been working for 16 hours straight without a break. Jake looked at the display screen. The cooling system had failed again. Without proper cooling, the drill would overheat and could explode. He had seen it happen before. 12 men died in Tunnel 7 last month when their machine blew up. The Corvanti blamed the workers for not maintaining it properly. "Everyone back away from the machine!" Jake shouted. The workers stepped back, their faces showing fear. They all knew what could happen when the old equipment failed. Jake tried to repair the cooling system, but it was no use. The pipes were cracked and leaking coolant fluid all over the tunnel floor. He would need to shut down the operation and call for replacement parts. That would mean delays, and the Corvanti hated delays. As he was about to give the shutdown order, he heard footsteps in the tunnel behind him. Jake turned to see Lisa Parker walking toward them. She was not supposed to be in this section of the mine. Lisa worked in communications, handling the data transmissions between different mining sites. "Jake, I need to talk to you," she said quietly. Her voice was tense, and she kept looking over her shoulder as if someone might be following her. "Lisa, you should not be here. If the guards find you in the wrong section, they will punish you," Jake warned. "This is important. I found something in the communication logs, something the Corvanti do not want us to know," Lisa whispered. Jake looked around at his workers. They were all listening, trying to hear what Lisa had to say. He motioned for everyone to gather around the broken machine so their conversation would be hidden from any surveillance equipment. "What did you find?" Jake asked. Lisa pulled out a small data device from her pocket. "I have been monitoring transmissions between Corvanti command ships. 3 days ago, they received orders from their home world. They are planning to move all humans off Earth and the colonies." "Move us where?" Tom asked. "To deep space labor camps, places where there is no chance of escape and no way to survive without their support. They want to break us completely, remove any hope we might have of ever being free again," Lisa explained. The tunnel went silent except for the dripping of coolant fluid. Jake felt something cold in his stomach. The Corvanti had always been cruel, but this was different. This was the end of everything. "How do you know this is true?" Jake asked. "I have been working with others, people in different mining operations, people in the factories, even some who work directly for the Corvanti overseers. We have been sharing information secretly for months," Lisa said. Jake was shocked. He had never imagined there was any kind of organized resistance. The Corvanti had made it clear that any attempt at rebellion would be met with death. Most humans had given up hope long ago. "There are more of us than you think, Jake. We have been quiet, careful, but we have been preparing." "The Corvanti think they have broken us, but they are wrong. We have just been waiting for the right moment," Lisa continued. "What right moment? We have no weapons, no ships, no way to fight them. They have technology we cannot even understand," Jake said. Lisa smiled for the first time since she arrived. "That is what they think. But we have been learning. Some of us have been studying their technology for years. We know their weaknesses now." She looked around at the group of miners. Jake, your operation has been providing materials for something special. The rare metals you dig up here, they are not all going to Corvanti ships. Some of them have been diverted to secret projects. What kind of projects? Jake asked. The kind that will give us a chance to fight back. The kind that will show the Corvanti that humans are not as broken as they believe, Lisa said. At that moment, they heard the sound of heavy boots echoing through the tunnel. Corvanti guards were coming. Lisa quickly hid the data device and stepped away from the group. Remember what I told you, she whispered to Jake. The dragons are waking up. The guards entered the tunnel, their tall alien forms casting long shadows in the dim light. They wore full battle armor and carried energy weapons that could kill a human with one shot. Their leader, a Corvanti officer with scarred faceplates, looked around at the broken machine and the gathered workers. Why is production stopped? The officer demanded in broken human speech. Jake stepped forward. Equipment failure, sir. The cooling system is broken. We need replacement parts. The officer walked over to examine the machine. His 4 eyes glowed red in the darkness as he studied the damage. You humans are careless with equipment. This is why you are slaves and we are masters. Yes, sir, Jake said, keeping his voice flat and emotionless. It was the tone all humans had learned to use around their alien overlords. The officer turned to leave, but then stopped and looked back at Lisa. You, communications worker. Why, are you in mining section? Lisa kept her face calm. Delivering production reports from Tunnel 12, sir. There was a problem with the transmission system. The officer stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. Return to your station immediately. Yes, sir, Lisa said and walked quickly toward the tunnel exit. After the guards left, Jake stood alone with his thoughts. For the first time in years, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Lisa's words echoed in his mind. The dragons are waking up. He looked at his workers, men and women who had spent their entire lives in slavery, and wondered if they too could become something more than just tools for alien masters. The drilling machine sat broken and silent. But maybe that was not the end. Maybe it was just the beginning. 3 days had passed since Lisa Parker's visit to the mining tunnel. Jake Martinez could not stop thinking about her words. Every time he looked at the broken equipment or watched his tired workers, he wondered if there really was hope for something better. The replacement parts for the drilling machine had finally arrived, but they were the same cheap quality as before. Jake knew they would break again within weeks. The Corvanti did not care about efficiency or safety. They only cared about keeping humans busy and defeated. During his lunch break, Jake walked through the older sections of the lunar facility. These tunnels had been built in the early days of Corvanti rule, when humans still had some of their own engineers working on the projects. Now they were mostly abandoned, used only for storage. As he wandered through the empty corridors, Jake heard voices coming from one of the side passages. He moved quietly toward the sound and peered around the corner. What he saw made him freeze in surprise. 20 people sat in a circle in the old storage room. Some he recognized as miners. Others looked like technicians or communications workers. At the center of the group stood a man Jake had never seen before. He was older, maybe 45, with gray hair and intelligent eyes. The situation is getting worse, the man was saying. Our contacts in the orbital stations report increased Corvanti military activity. They are preparing for something big. Jake recognized Lisa Parker sitting in the group. She looked up and saw him watching from the doorway. For a moment, their eyes met, and Jake thought she would signal for the others to stop talking. Instead, she gestured for him to come inside. Jake, I was hoping you would find us, Lisa said. Everyone, this is Jake Martinez. He runs the deep mining operation in Sector 7. The gray-haired man walked over to Jake and extended his hand. I am Ryan Kelly. I used to work for NASA before the Corvanti came. Now I fix their equipment and learn how it works. Jake shook his hand, still not sure what was happening. Lisa said there were others, but I did not expect this many. This is just one group, Ryan explained. There are similar gatherings happening all over the lunar facility and on Earth and in the other colonies. We have been building this network for 5 years. A woman with short black hair stood up from the circle. I am Kate Wilson. I used to study ocean life before the invasion. Now I study Corvanti biology. She smiled grimly. Their bodies have interesting weaknesses. Jake looked around at the faces in the room. These people did not look like broken slaves. They looked determined, almost excited. What exactly are you all doing here? Ryan answered. We are preparing for war, Jake. Not the kind of war the Corvanti expect, but the kind they cannot win. How? Can you fight them? They have weapons and ships and armies, Jake said. They have technology, Kate said. But they do not understand humans. They think we are like other species they have conquered. They think if they make us work hard enough and punish us enough, we will accept being slaves forever. A young man with oil-stained hands raised his hand. My name is Steve Adams. I work on the transport ships that carry ore between the mining sites. But that is not all I do. What do you mean? Jake asked. Steve grinned. Some of those transport ships are not really transports anymore. We have been modifying them slowly, carefully, adding weapons, improving engines, installing better shields. The Corvanti see mining barges going back and forth. They do not see warships. Jake felt his heart beating faster. You have been building a fleet. Not just us, Ryan said. Remember, this network spans multiple worlds. Teams of engineers and technicians have been working on secret projects for years. We have ships, weapons, communication systems, even some surprises the Corvanti have never seen before. Lisa stood up and walked over to Jake. The materials from your mining operation have been crucial. The rare metals you extract are used in advanced electronics and power systems. Without your work, none of this would be possible. You have been stealing from the Corvanti? Jake asked. We have been taking what belongs to us, Kate corrected. These are human worlds. These are human resources. We are just reclaiming them. An older woman sitting near the back of the group spoke for the first time. My name is Amy Chen. I work in the computer systems that control the mining operations. I have been mapping their networks, finding ways to shut them down when the time comes. When the time comes for what? Jake asked. Though he thought he already knew the answer. Ryan looked serious. Lisa told you about the relocation plan. The Corvanti want to move all humans to deep space camps where we cannot cause trouble. They plan to start in 6 months. We cannot let that happen, Kate added. Once they move us to those camps, there will be no way back. Humanity will be finished forever. Jake sat down heavily on an old storage crate. The weight of what they were telling him was overwhelming. So you plan to fight before they can move us? We plan to win before they can move us, Steve corrected. Jake, the Corvanti are not as strong as they pretend. They rule through fear, but their actual military forces are spread thin across many star systems. They are fighting wars with other species on the far side of their empire. Amy pulled out a small device and projected a holographic star map into the air above the group. This is what they do not want us to know. The Corvanti Empire is huge, but it is also fragile. They control hundreds of worlds with relatively few ships and soldiers. Here in human space, she continued, pointing to a cluster of stars on the map, they have maybe 50 combat ships and 10,000 ground troops. That sounds like a lot, but it is spread across 13 colonies and billions of humans. Ryan nodded. If we can coordinate our attacks, hit them simultaneously across multiple worlds, their command structure will collapse. They rely on fear and the belief that resistance is hopeless. Once that belief breaks, everything changes. Jake looked around the room again. How many people are part of this network? Hundreds of thousands, Lisa said quietly. Maybe millions. Most do not know about the others. We keep the cells small and separate for security. But when the signal goes out, they will all act together. Kate leaned forward. Jake, we need your help. The mining operations are key to their economy. If the mines shut down, their supply lines break. If we can turn the miners into fighters, we have a ready-made army in the most strategic locations. My people are exhausted. They have been worked to death for decades. How can they fight? Jake asked. Steve smiled. Exhausted people can still be angry people, and angry people who have nothing left to lose are the most dangerous people in the universe. Ryan stood up and walked to the center of the room. Jake, I want to show you something, but first, you have to decide if you are with us. Once you see what we have built, there is no going back. Jake looked at each face in the room. These were ordinary people who had decided to do something extraordinary. They had spent years preparing for a war that seemed impossible to win, but listening to them talk, he began to believe they might actually have a chance. The Corvanti think they broke us, Jake said slowly. They think we are just tools to be used. Exactly, Kate said. They see slaves. They do not see dragons. Jake stood up and looked Ryan in the eyes. Show me what you have built. Ryan Kelly led Jake through a maze of abandoned tunnels deeper into the lunar facility. The passages here were old and narrow, carved out during the first years after the Corvanti invasion. Their footsteps echoed in the darkness as they walked, past rusted equipment and forgotten storage rooms. Where are we going? Jake asked as they descended another level. Somewhere the Corvanti never look, Ryan replied. They think these old sections are worthless. That was their first mistake. After 20 minutes of walking, they reached a heavy metal door that looked like all the others. Ryan pressed his hand against a hidden scanner built into the wall. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Jake stepped inside and stopped in amazement. The room beyond was enormous, carved out of the solid rock beneath the lunar surface. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens glowing with data and star charts. Dozens of people worked at various stations, their faces lit by the blue light of monitors. Welcome to Dragon Command, Ryan said with pride. At the center of the room stood a massive holographic display showing the entire solar system. Tiny lights marked the positions of planets, space stations, and ships. Jake could see Earth surrounded by orbital facilities, Mars with its mining operations, and the asteroid belt where transport ships moved between mining sites. This is incredible, Jake whispered. How long have you been building this? 5 years for this facility. But the planning started much earlier, Ryan explained. He led Jake to one of the computer stations where a woman with short blonde hair was analyzing data streams. Jake, meet Nina Davis. She coordinates communications between all the resistance cells throughout human space. Nina looked up from her screen and smiled. Jake Martinez from Sector 7. We have been hoping you would join us. Your mining data has been very helpful in our planning. My mining data? Every report you file, every equipment request, every production schedule gets copied and sent here, Nina explained. We have been tracking Corvanti resource flows for years. We know exactly how dependent they are on human labor. Ryan gestured toward the holographic display. Show him Project Firebird, Nina. Nina touched her console and the display zoomed in on the asteroid belt. Dozens of red dots appeared among the mining operations. Each of those dots represents a converted ship. Mining barges, cargo haulers, even some passenger transports, all modified with weapons and armor. Jake stared at the display. How many ships? 237, Nina said. Not enough to fight the entire Corvanti fleet, but enough to hit their key installations simultaneously. A new voice spoke from behind them. And we will not be fighting alone. Jake turned to see a tall man with graying temples walking toward them. His bearing suggested military training, and there was something familiar about his face. Jake Martinez. I would like you to meet Dan Foster, Ryan said. He works as a supervisor for the Corvanti administration. Jake felt his muscles tense. Dan Foster was one of the human collaborators, the ones who helped the Corvanti control other humans. Why is he here? Dan smiled sadly. Because I finally realized that no matter how well I serve them, they will never see me as anything more than a useful animal. When they are done with Earth, they plan to dispose of the collaborators too. Dan has been providing us with inside information about Corvanti military operations, Ryan explained. He knows their patrol schedules, their communication codes, their defensive positions. The Corvanti are not as smart as they think, Dan continued. They never change their security procedures. They use the same codes for months. They trust that humans are too broken to organize any real resistance. Nina brought up a new display showing detailed schematics of Corvanti military bases. Dan gave us these blueprints. We know exactly where their command centers are, where they store their weapons, where their ships are docked. Jake looked at the information flowing across the screens around the room. This is military intelligence. You have been planning a real war. Not just planning, Ryan said. Preparing. Let me show you something else. He led Jake to another section of the command center where a group of technicians were working on strange-looking devices. The equipment looked like a mixture of human and alien technology, with cables and circuits woven together in complex patterns. What are these? Jake asked. A young woman looked up from her work. I am Amy Chen. These are computer viruses, but not the kind that attack human systems. We have learned how Corvanti computers work. Their networks are completely vulnerable to the right kind of attack. Vulnerable how? They never expected humans to understand their technology well enough to hack it, Amy explained. We can shut down their communication networks, disable their weapon systems, even take control of their ships if we get close enough. Ryan nodded toward another group of technicians. Kate Wilson's team has been developing biological weapons specifically designed to affect Corvanti physiology. Not to kill them, but to disable them temporarily. We want to win this war, not commit genocide. Jake felt overwhelmed by the scope of what he was seeing. How many people know about this? Here on Luna, about 300, but every human colony has similar operations, Nina said. Mars has converted mining equipment into artillery. Europa has trained teams of underwater specialists for their ocean facilities. The asteroid belt has our main fleet. And Earth? Jake asked. Dan Foster answered. Earth has the biggest secret of all. Underground factories producing weapons and supplies. Hidden training camps where former soldiers teach combat skills. Communication networks that span every major city. The Corvanti think Earth is completely under their control, Ryan added. They have no idea that millions of humans are ready to fight. Nina touched her console again, and the display showed a countdown timer. We have been waiting for the right moment to act. The Corvanti relocation plan gives us a deadline. We cannot wait any longer. How long? Jake asked. 6 weeks, she replied. On day 1, Amy's viruses will attack their communication networks. On day 2, our ships will hit their orbital facilities. On day 3, ground teams will assault their command centers. And then? Ryan looked serious. Then we find out if humans really are as tough as we think we are. At that moment, alarms started blaring throughout the command center. Red warning lights flashed, and technicians began shouting updates to each other. What is happening? Jake asked. Nina's face went pale as she read her monitors. Corvanti security forces are conducting surprise inspections throughout the lunar facility. They are checking areas they have never searched before. Dan Foster cursed. Someone must have told them about unusual activity in the old sections. We need to evacuate, Ryan said. Everyone follow emergency protocols. Wipe the computers and seal the entrances. As people rushed around the command center shutting down equipment and destroying sensitive data, Jake realized this was no longer theoretical. The war had already begun, whether they were ready or not. What do I do now? He asked Ryan. Now you go back to your mining operation and wait for the signal, Ryan replied. When it comes, you will know what to do. Jake looked around at the organized chaos as the resistance members prepared to abandon their secret base. These people had spent years building something incredible, and now they might lose it all before the real fight even started. But as he watched them work together, staying calm under pressure and following their emergency plans, he realized something important. The Corvanti had tried to break the human spirit, but they had only made it stronger. The dragons were not just waking up, they were ready to fly. The signal came 3 weeks earlier than planned. Jake Martinez was working in Tunnel 12 when his communication device buzzed with a coded message. 3 short beeps followed by 2 long ones. Every human in the resistance network had memorized that pattern. It meant one thing: the dragons were taking flight. Around him, his mining crew continued their work, unaware that everything was about to change. Jake looked at his watch. According to the plan, the first phase would begin in exactly 6 hours. Amy Chen's computer viruses would attack Corvanti systems across human space simultaneously. Jake walked over to Tom, one of his most trusted workers. I need you to pass a message to the others. Tell them the special shipment arrives tonight. Everyone needs to be ready. Tom nodded. He had been recruited into the resistance 2 weeks ago and knew what the coded words meant. Within minutes, the message would spread to every human worker in the lunar facility. 6 levels above them, in the Corvanti Command Center, alien officers monitored their displays without knowing that human hackers were already inside their networks. Amy Chen and her team had spent months planting dormant programs in Corvanti computers. At precisely midnight, those programs would activate. In the asteroid belt, Matt Rodriguez stood on the bridge of a converted mining barge that now bristled with hidden weapons. Around him, 200 other ships waited in the darkness between the rocks. To Corvanti scanners, they looked like normal civilian vessels going about their mining duties. All ships report ready, his communications officer announced. Fleet coordination is green across all sectors. Matt nodded. Begin countdown to Phase 2 activation. Back on Luna, Jake made his way through the mining tunnels toward the old abandoned sections. He was not the only one moving. Throughout the facility, resistance members were quietly leaving their workstations and heading toward predetermined locations. In the communications center, Lisa Parker sat at her normal workstation, but her fingers were poised over hidden controls built into her console. Around her, Corvanti supervisors watched the data streams from across human space, unaware that their most trusted human technician was about to turn their own systems against them. At exactly midnight, Luna time, Amy Chen pressed a single button in a hidden bunker deep beneath the lunar surface. Across human space, dormant programs suddenly came to life. The effect was immediate and devastating. Corvanti communication networks went silent. Defense systems shut down. Navigation computers began displaying false information. Even life support. Systems in some facilities started malfunctioning. On the Corvanti command ship orbiting Earth, Admiral Vex stared at his displays in confusion. What is happening to our systems? His communications officer, a young Corvanti with 4 arms, worked frantically at his console. Sir, I am receiving error reports from every installation in human space. Our networks appear to be under attack. Attack by whom? Humans do not have the technology for this kind of warfare. Admiral Vex snarled. That was when the second phase began. In the asteroid belt, Matt Rodriguez gave the order that 200 ship captains had been waiting years to hear. All ships. This is Dragon Leader, weapons free. Begin assault on designated targets. The converted mining ships dropped their disguises and revealed their true nature. Missile batteries emerged from hidden compartments. Energy weapons powered up. Armor plating slid into place over critical systems. In minutes, a civilian mining fleet had transformed into a battle squadron. Their first targets were the Corvanti, supply depots scattered throughout the asteroid belt. These facilities stored fuel, ammunition, and spare parts for the alien fleet. Without them, Corvanti ships would be stranded far from home. The attacks caught the aliens completely off guard. Automated defense systems tried to respond, but Amy's viruses had already corrupted their targeting computers. Weapons platforms fired at empty space, while human ships methodically destroyed their real targets. On Luna, Jake and his team moved through the old tunnels toward their objective, the main power station that supplied energy to the Corvanti military base. They carried improvised weapons and explosives made from mining equipment. "Remember, we need to disable the station, not destroy it," Jake told his team as they approached the target. "We will need that power for our own operations." Luke Thompson, a former soldier who had been recruited from the Mars colonies, led the assault team. His people had trained in secret for months, learning how to fight in the low-gravity environment of Luna. "Charges are set," Luke reported. "When we blow the main conduits, their backup generators will kick in. That gives us maybe 10 minutes before they restore full power." 10 minutes is all we need," Jake replied. The explosions echoed through the lunar tunnels like thunder. Emergency lighting flickered as the Corvanti base lost main power. In the confusion, human teams struck targets throughout the facility: weapons storage areas, communication centers, transportation hubs. But the most important target was the detention center where the Corvanti held human prisoners. Kate Wilson led this assault personally, using her knowledge of alien biology to deploy non-lethal gases that would incapacitate the guards without harming human captives. "Security doors are opening," she reported over the communication network. "Prisoners are secure and ready for evacuation." On Earth, similar operations were taking place simultaneously. In the underground cities beneath New York, London, and Tokyo, human resistance fighters emerged from hidden tunnels and struck at Corvanti installations. Their targets were carefully chosen: communication hubs, transportation centers, and the orbital elevators that connected Earth to space. The Corvanti had always believed that humans were too scattered and disorganized to mount coordinated attacks. They were learning how wrong they had been. In orbit around Earth, the Corvanti command ship finally began receiving status reports from their scattered forces. The news was uniformly bad. Bases were under attack. Communication networks were down. Supply lines had been cut. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the human resistance," the communications officer reported. "Put it through," Admiral Vex ordered. The main display screen flickered and showed the face of a human woman. Grace Liu, the tactical genius who had coordinated the multi-phase assault, looked directly at the alien commander. "Admiral Vex, my name is Grace Liu. I represent the United Human Resistance. Your forces are currently under attack across 13 star systems. Your supply lines have been cut. Your communication networks have been compromised." Admiral Vex leaned forward in his command chair. "Human, you have made a serious mistake. Our reinforcements will crush your pathetic rebellion within days." Grace smiled. "What reinforcements?" "Admiral, your empire is fighting wars on 17 different fronts. Your nearest battle fleet is 6 months away, and by the time they arrive, there will be nothing left of your presence in human space. You cannot win this war. We have superior technology and military training," the Admiral protested. "You have technology?" Grace agreed. "But you do not understand humans. You thought you could break us by making us work in your mines and factories. Instead, you taught us how your equipment works. You thought you could control us by putting us in separate colonies. Instead, you gave us time to organize. You thought you could keep us weak by limiting our resources. Instead, you made us resourceful." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Vex staring at a blank screen. Throughout human space, the third phase of the rebellion was already beginning. Ground assault teams, trained in secret and equipped with captured Corvanti weapons, began attacking the most heavily defended alien installations. Jake Martinez, who had started the day as a mining supervisor, now found himself leading an assault on the Corvanti command bunker beneath Luna's surface. His team moved through corridors that had once seemed impossible to reach, using maintenance tunnels and service passages that the aliens had forgotten about. Dragon command to all units. Lisa Parker's voice crackled over their communication devices. Phase 3 is a success. All primary objectives have been secured. Corvanti forces are in full retreat. Jake paused in the corridor and looked back at his team. Miners, technicians, and maintenance workers who had spent their lives as slaves were now armed freedom fighters advancing through an alien military base. "The dragons are not just awake," he said into his communicator. "They are hunting." The final battle began at dawn on Earth, though dawn meant something different now. For the first time in 2 centuries, human ships filled the skies above the homeworld. Matt Rodriguez's fleet had fought its way through the outer system and now approached Earth orbit, where the remaining Corvanti forces had gathered for their last stand. On the surface, Jake Martinez stood in the ruins of what had once been the Corvanti Administrative Center in Geneva. The alien complex had been built over the old United Nations building, a symbol of human surrender. Now, resistance fighters had torn down the Corvanti flags and raised banners of Earth's nations. "Jake, we have incoming transmission from the orbital." "Battle!" Lisa Parker called out from a captured communication station. Jake walked over to hear the report. Matt Rodriguez's voice crackled through the speakers, mixed with the sounds of ship engines and weapons fire. "Ground control, this is Dragon Fleet. We have engaged the Corvanti battle group. Enemy forces consist of 12 heavy cruisers and approximately 40 escort vessels." "What are our numbers?" Jake asked. "Dragon Fleet has 170 operational ships plus civilian vessels converted to support roles. We are outnumbered in terms of individual ship power, but we have tactical advantages." Lisa operated the communication controls with practiced skill. "Dragon Fleet, be advised that orbital defense platforms are offline. Amy Chen's team has successfully corrupted their targeting systems." The battle above Earth was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships swarmed around the larger Corvanti vessels like angry bees attacking a giant. They used tactics no military academy had ever taught: ramming attacks, coordinated missile storms, and electronic warfare that turned the aliens' own systems against them. Captain Steve Adams, flying a converted cargo hauler armed with mining explosives, led a squadron of similar ships against a Corvanti cruiser. "This is for every human who died in your minds," he transmitted as his ship collided with the alien vessel's engine section. The explosion lit up Earth's sky like a second sun. On Luna, Ryan Kelly monitored the battle from Dragon Command, which had been rebuilt in a more secure location after the original base was discovered. Banks of computers showed the status of resistance operations throughout human space. "Mars reports complete liberation," Nina Davis announced. "All Corvanti forces have either surrendered or fled the system." "Europa confirms the same," added Amy Chen. "The underwater cities are free." "What about the outer colonies?" Ryan asked. "Titan, Ganymede, and Callisto report successful uprisings. The asteroid belt is entirely under human control. Only Earth. Orbit remains contested." As if summoned by their conversation, Dan Foster's voice came over the communication system. He was aboard one of the human ships in the orbital battle, having volunteered to serve as a liaison officer despite his past collaboration with the Corvanti. "Dragon Command, this is Dan Foster aboard the ship Freedom's Price. I am in direct contact with Admiral Vex on the Corvanti flagship. He is requesting terms for surrender." Ryan looked around at his team in amazement. "Already? The battle has only been going on for 6 hours." "The Admiral is not stupid," Dan replied. "He can see that his ships are outnumbered and outmaneuvered. His supply lines are cut. His reinforcements are months away. He knows this is not a battle he can win." "What are his terms?" Jake asked, joining the conversation from the surface. "He wants safe passage for his remaining ships and crews. In return, he will order all Corvanti forces in human space to stand down and withdraw." The command center fell silent. After 200 years of slavery, the idea of Corvanti's surrender seemed impossible to believe. "There is something else," Dan continued. "Admiral Vex says he has received communications from other parts of the Corvanti Empire. News of the human rebellion has spread. Other conquered species are beginning to rise up as well." Kate Wilson, who had been coordinating ground operations from Mars, joined the conversation. "Dan, are you saying the entire Corvanti Empire is collapsing?" "Not collapsing, but definitely shaking. Apparently, the Corvanti have been using fear of their invincibility to control dozens of species. Once word spreads that humans successfully rebelled, that fear disappears." Alex Morgan, a former teacher who had become the Resistance's chief diplomatic coordinator, spoke up from his station. "This is bigger than just human freedom. This could be the beginning of galactic liberation." "One step at a time," Ryan cautioned. "First we secure our own freedom, then we see what else is possible." Jake made a decision. "Dan, tell Admiral Vex we accept his surrender terms, but with conditions. All Corvanti military personnel leave human space within 30 days. All human prisoners and slaves throughout their empire must be released and returned home, and they must provide reparations for 2 centuries of occupation." "He will not like the reparations demand," Dan warned. "He is not in a position to negotiate." Grace Liu's voice joined the conversation. She was coordinating the final assault on the Corvanti command ship. "Admiral, our ships have your vessel surrounded. Your shields are failing and your weapons are offline. You can surrender with honor, or you can be destroyed with your ship. Choose quickly." The response came within minutes. Admiral Vex's image appeared on communication screens throughout human space. The proud alien commander looked tired and defeated. "I, Admiral Vex of the Corvanti Imperial Navy, do hereby surrender my forces to the human resistance. All Corvanti military personnel in human space are ordered to lay down their weapons and prepare for withdrawal." Across 13 colonies and thousands of installations, Corvanti soldiers began raising white flags of surrender. The rebellion that had started in secret tunnels and hidden bases had achieved the impossible. But the most important moment came when Sam Wright, a former teacher who had spent years organizing civilian resistance, made a broadcast that reached every corner of human space. "Citizens of Earth and the colonies, this is Sam Wright speaking from the liberated city of New Washington on Mars. After 200 years of occupation, humanity is free." The celebration began immediately. In the tunnels of Luna, miners who had spent their lives in darkness danced under artificial lights. On Earth, humans emerged from underground cities and saw open sky for the first time. On the orbital stations, workers looked down at their homeworld and knew their children would grow up free. Jake Martinez stood in Geneva and watched human ships landing at the spaceport where Corvanti vessels had once brought supplies for the occupation forces. Lisa Parker joined him, still wearing the headset she had used to coordinate communications during the final battle. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we build," Jake replied. "We build a better world than the one the Corvanti destroyed. We build ships to explore space as free beings, not slaves. We build a society that remembers this lesson." "What lesson is that?" Jake looked up at the sky where human ships were still celebrating their victory with formation flights and light displays. "That you cannot break the human spirit. You can enslave our bodies, destroy our cities, and try to crush our hope. But somewhere, in the deepest tunnels and the darkest corners, there will always be humans who remember what freedom means." 3 months later, the first Galactic Liberation Congress met on Earth. Representatives from 27 species that had overthrown Corvanti rule gathered to form a new alliance based on cooperation rather than conquest. Matt Rodriguez, now promoted to Admiral of the Human Defense Fleet, addressed the assembly. "The dragons of Earth send greetings to the dragons of 100 worlds. Together, we have proven that no empire built on oppression can stand forever. The Corvanti Empire did not disappear overnight, but it would never be the same. Without the fear that had kept their subjects in line, they were forced to negotiate treaties with the species they had once enslaved. Some Corvanti worlds even chose to join the Galactic Liberation Alliance voluntarily. Ryan Kelly, speaking at the dedication of the Memorial to Human Resistance, perhaps said it best. They tried to break us. They tried to convince us that we were nothing more than tools to be used and discarded. They thought they could chain the dragons and keep them sleeping forever. He paused and looked out at the crowd of humans and aliens who had come to honor the memory of those who died fighting for freedom. But dragons do not break. Dragons endure. Dragons adapt. Dragons learn. And when the time comes, dragons fly higher than their captors ever dreamed possible. The memorial bore a simple inscription in dozens of languages. They tried to break us. Instead, they woke the dragons. Above Earth, human ships patrolled the space lanes that had once been controlled by alien overlords. In the asteroid belt, mining operations continued, but now the workers owned the mines. On Mars and Luna and a dozen other worlds, human children played under open skies and learned about the time when their people had been slaves. They learned so they would never forget. They learned so they would never allow it to happen again. They learned because the dragons must always be ready to wake when freedom is threatened. The age of human slavery was over. The age of galactic liberation had begun.